Every level of NFL draft class explained.
Level 1, awful.
In level 1, these are the worst draft classes of all time, and in every level after this, we will go over better and better drafts until we reach the absolute pinnacle of NFL classes. To start is the 1992 NFL Draft, infamous for its lack of star power. It's a class that's almost entirely forgettable, with no Hall of Famers and a handful of Pro Bowl appearances scattered among role players. Troy Vincent, the 7th overall pick, was a solid long-term starter and made a few Pro Bowls, but he was never a true superstar. On the other end, Steve Entman was the 1st overall pick, a total bust, never living up to the hype and quickly fading into obscurity. Even with the lack of Hall of Famers in 1992, I'd be shocked if anyone knows more than 5 people from this next class. The 1984 draft is a relic of missed chances. With no Hall of Famers and only a couple of Pro Bowlers, it's a class that failed to produce any lasting impact. Irving Fryer, the 1st overall pick, had a long, productive career and made a few Pro Bowls, but he was never a transcendent player. Same goes with Boomer Esiason, who made a few Super Bowls with the Bengals, drafted in the 2nd round, but realistically, that's it with this class. Meanwhile, Mossy Cade, the 6th overall pick, barely made a dent in the league, quickly becoming a forgotten name, only lasting 2 seasons in the league. Next up, we have the 2008 class. Despite a few solid starters, the class is defined by unrealized potential and a total absence of game-changing talent. Matt Ryan, taken 3rd overall, is the clear standout, an MVP winner who led his team to the Super Bowl, but whose career is forever haunted by the infamous 28-3 collapse and a lack of postseason success after that. You do have solid players like CJ Tsuke, Aqib Talib, and Jordy Nelson, but a lot of just solid players. Nothing super special, and the only potential Hall of Fame player is Calais Campbell. On the other end, you have Vernon Gholston, the 6th overall pick, who is the poster child for draft busts. 0 sacks, 0 impact, and a career that fizzled out almost immediately. This class has nothing on the 06 class. The 2006 draft is another graveyard of broken dreams, loaded with high picks who never delivered, and a few who were solid, but not spectacular. You had Mario Williams, Reggie Bush, and Vince Young all taken in the top 3, none of which lived up to the hype, even if they were okay. Shout out to Berkshire Ferguson for being a multi-time Pro Bowler, but still nothing outstanding. Some other good players like Antonio Cromartie, D'Amico Ryans, and Jay Cutler are here as well. Meanwhile, Vernon Davis, the 6th overall pick, never became the dominant force expected of a top 10 selection. You do have Devin Hester taken 57th overall as the greatest return man ever, but as a 2nd rounder and a specialist, his impact is limited, even though he is in the Hall of Fame. You also have Haloti Ngata, who will more than likely be in the Hall of Fame, but since he isn't currently, this class is still on the outside looking in. Level 2, you get to some justifiable draft classes.
Level 2, still bad.
And so to start, we have the 2009 NFL Draft. Matt Stafford, the 1st overall pick, has had a long and productive career, culminating in a Super Bowl win with the Rams. Clay Matthews became a defensive star, and Shady McCoy was one of the league's most dynamic backs for a stretch. You have guys like Mark Sanchez, Alex Mack, and Max Unger here as well. But if we're pulling up those people to the top, it's just not a great class, even if these players were solid. For every Stafford or Matthews, there's Jason Smith or Josh Freeman, high picks who never lived up to the expectations. The 2015 NFL Draft class really isn't much better. You have Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota at the top 2 spots who didn't live up to the hype, though they both have been in the league for a long time and have had respectable careers. Todd Gurley was the best player at his peak in this draft. The next probably best is Stephon Diggs taken in the 5th round, or Tyler Lockett, or Leonard Williams. All very good players, but nothing close to Hall of Fame worthy. You do have another 5th round gem with Grady Jarrett here, and finding Trent Brown in the 7th is a great pickup, but still overall, a bad draft class. With that said, this next class might just be a 2-person race. The 1991 NFL Draft is another example of a class that's really just not good enough. Russell Maryland, the 1st overall pick, was a solid contributor to some great Dallas teams, but never a true star. Brett Favre and Aeneas Williams, both taken after the 1st round, are the glaring exceptions. Both becoming Hall of Famers, and one of which becoming one of the most iconic quarterbacks in NFL history. But Favre and Williams' greatness is an outlier, and the rest of the class is filled with players who are average at best. Finally, the 2000 NFL Draft is remembered for one thing: Tom Brady taken 199th overall. Brady's career is the stuff of legend, and he's the ultimate outlier. The rest of this class is a parade of mediocrity, with few Pro Bowlers and even fewer stars, besides Brian Urlacher. Urlacher was a defensive force and a Hall of Famer, helping revolutionize the position and keeping the Bears relevant during his 2000s run. MVP Shaun Alexander is here as well, but then that's it. Courtney Brown, the 1st overall pick, was a complete disappointment, and the top of this draft is filled with players who never lived up to their billing. But in level 3, we get to some draft classes that are fine.
Level 3, fine.
Take the 2010 NFL Draft. It's a class that gave the league some real talent. Players like Ndamukong Suh, Earl Thomas, Trent Williams, and Gronk all made their mark on the league. There's a healthy list of Pro Bowlers scattered throughout the rounds as well. But for every Gronk or Suh, there's a string of first rounders who never quite lived up to the hype. You have some absolute steals of the draft, and Cam Chancellor in the 5th, and Antonio Brown late in the 6th round. The problem is the top of the draft, and honestly, even if these players are good, there's only a few lock Hall of Famers in this class like Gronk and Trent Williams. Earl Thomas is probably getting in, and Antonio Brown I don't think is getting in because he literally quit on the team in the middle of a game, and I think the voters will remember that. Sam Bradford, the first overall pick, had a career defined by injuries and unmet expectations. The draft class as a whole is solid, with a few stars and a lot of reliable starters, but it never feels like it produced truly generational game changers besides Gronk and Trent Williams. The next class we get to had one of the most controversial draft nights ever. The 2005 NFL Draft, who would the 49ers take first? Alex Smith or another big name in Aaron Rodgers? Well, we know who they picked. But it worked out for Rodgers, becoming a first ballot Hall of Famer. This class also produced the likes of DeMarcus Ware, who was a dominant pass rusher and a Hall of Famer, and Justin Tuck along with Frank Gore in the 3rd. Thomas Davis also had a great Panthers career. But the top of this draft is filled with players who were just okay, and a few who were disappointing. Alex Smith, the first overall pick, had a long and respectable career, but he was never a true superstar. Ronnie Brown, Braylon Edwards, along with Cadillac Williams, never lived up to their draft spots. It's a draft that gets the job done, but it's not one you'd ever call special. And finally, we have the 1979 NFL Draft. There are a few Hall of Famers, Dan Hampton, Kellen Winslow, and Joe Montana all standing out, with Montana in particular becoming an all-time great along with Kellen Winslow. But outside of those names, the class is filled with players who had good, not great careers. There's a decent spread of Pro Bowlers and plenty of guys who stuck around the league for years, but the overall impact is muted. Next up in level 4, we're starting to get to some pretty solid drafts.
Level 4, good drafts.
And I know this class gets a lot of flack, but the 2013 NFL draft class is actually pretty good. There are a handful of solid starters and a couple of absolute superstars in Travis Kelce, D-Hop, and Lane Johnson, all standing out as the best of the bunch. But the top of the draft is littered with letdowns. Eric Fisher, the first overall pick, was serviceable but never dominant, and Luke Joeckel, taken 2nd, was a bust. You have Tavon Austin, who was 8th overall, and a bust. You have guys in later rounds like Zach Ertz, Darius Slay, Le'Veon Bell, Keenan Allen, and Honey Badger, even some steals in the 4th round with David Bakhtiari and Kyle Juszczyk, with Jordan Poyer in the 7th. These guys may not be Hall of Famers, but they're at least all in the Hall of Very Good. The class gets a bad rap because the top of the 1st round is pretty mid at best. But the early 2010s actually had a really good run of NFL draft classes, because up next is 2012. There's plenty of talent here. Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, Stephon Gilmore, Fletcher Cox, and Harrison Smith are all probably going to be Hall of Famers. Then there's several other multiple-time Pro Bowlers like Dontari Poe, Levante David, and Demario Davis. Of course, Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, with T.Y. Hilton and Kirk Cousins going later after him. It's just not overwhelmingly great, and that's because of the top of the draft mostly. The top of the draft is a mixed bag. Andrew Luck was a franchise quarterback when healthy, but his career was cut short due to those health concerns. RG3 was a flash in the pan as well because of the injuries. The class is deep with a few Hall of Famers and a lot of solid contributors, but it never quite reaches the level of legendary. Now this next class is bordering on great, but right now it's stuck on the good tier. The 2014 NFL Draft is a perfect example of this tier. It's a class that delivered real star power and depth. You've got Aaron Donald, arguably the greatest D-tackle of all time. Odell, who was on pace to become a Hall of Fame wide receiver as well. You have Zach Martin, Khalil Mack, and Mike Evans, who are all going to be Hall of Famers as well. There's talent at every level, and the class is loaded with players who change the trajectory of their teams. It's just not quite all time. Same goes with this 90s crew. The 1993 NFL Draft is another strong showing. This class produced a string of Hall of Famers: Willie Roaf, Michael Strahan, Jerome Bettis, John Lynch, and Will Shields, all left their mark on the league. There's a sense of consistency and quality throughout the rounds, with plenty of Pro Bowlers and long-term starters. The top of the draft is filled with players who lived up to their billing, like Drew Bledsoe, who's more than just a guy who got injured for Brady, and Garrison Hurst, who was a beast before his injury and still had some solid years after that. Even the later rounds produced some impact talent. It's a draft that helped define the era. And while it doesn't have the sheer volume of legends as the very best classes, it's comfortably in the good tier. Can't argue that with the next class either. In 1982, Mike Munchak, Marcus Allen, Morton Anderson, and Andre Tippett are headliners, all earning gold jackets and anchoring their spots on their team for over a decade. Now this next one might be a little controversial. The 1998 NFL Draft is remembered for its top-end talent and depth. Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Randy Moss, Alan Faneca are all Hall of Famers. The class after this insane first round kinda teeters off, though it does have some really good players. Jeremiah Trotter, Hines Ward, and Amon Green, but I really can't put this class any higher. Finally, the 2002 NFL Draft class rounds out this group. It's a class that produced Ed Reed, Dwight Freeney, and Julius Peppers, 3 players who defined their positions and will be remembered as all-time greats. Ed Reed, who was the best ball-hawking safety of the 21st century, and Julius Peppers, a 6'7" freak of nature who could play multiple positions. You have guys like Deion Branch, Antoine Randall L., and Clinton Portis here as well. It's not quite legendary, but it's a draft class that delivered real results and set up teams for sustained success. Next up, we actually have some really great drafts.
Level 5, great drafts.
Even with the first 4 picks being misses, the 2021 NFL Draft is already making its case as one of the greats. The top of the draft is loaded with instant talent. Jamar Chase has already established himself as one of the league's most dangerous receivers. Micah Parsons is a defensive force and perennial All-Pro. Penei Sewell is a dominant tackle. Pat Surtain II is a shutdown corner, and all 4 of those players look like they're going to make the Hall of Fame. There's depth everywhere you look with this class with Rashawn Slater, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Landon Dickerson, Pat Freiermuth, Amon-Ra St. Brown, J.C. Horn, Chuba Hubbard, and Creed Humphrey have all become foundational pieces for their teams. The class is young, but the early returns are so strong that this is looking like it's going to define the next era of NFL football. But if you think that's insane, the next one is even crazier. The 2001 NFL Draft is another example of a class that delivered greatness across the board. You have one of the most dynamic players to ever touch the field in Michael Vick, taken at the first overall pick. He was more than just a player, but a complete shift in how we see the position played. Same goes with LaDainian Tomlinson, who's a Hall of Famer and one of the most dynamic running backs the league has ever seen. We will always talk about his 06 31 touchdown season. Steve Hutchinson and Richard Seymour both earned gold jackets, and Drew Brees, taken in the second round, became one of the most prolific quarterbacks in NFL history, and is shoo-in for the Hall of Fame when he's eligible. Having Steve Smith Sr. in the third round is a great find, and it's a shame he's not in the Hall of Fame right now. There's a deep roster of Pro Bowlers and long-term starters like Santana Moss, Reggie Wayne, Deuce McAllister, and Todd Heap here as well. Honestly, this one was great, but the next one produced some real franchise icons. The 1995 NFL Draft is stacked with Hall of Famers. Tony Baselli, Warren Sapp, Derrick Brooks, Ty Law, and Curtis Martin all left undeniable marks on the game, and the class is filled with players who became the backbone on some championship-level teams. Something besides Coke was being produced in the mid-'80s, and that's an electric draft class. The 1985 NFL Draft is legendary for its sheer volume of greatness. Bruce Smith, Jerry Rice are some of the greatest at their positions to ever do it. Chris Dolman and Andre Reed are another couple of Hall of Famers who came out of this class. The draft did produce stars at every position and impact players as well, like Randall Cunningham. The 1990 NFL Draft rounds out this great group. Emmitt Smith, Junior Seau, Cortez Kennedy, Leroy Butler, and Shannon Sharp all became Hall of Famers, and the class is loaded with Pro Bowlers and long-term starters. Richmond Webb, Glenn Parker, and Mark Carrier as well. They're just not legendary, like the Level 6 class.
Level 6, legendary.
The 1994 NFL Draft is a perfect example of this legendary status. It's a class that produced a staggering number of Hall of Famers and all-time greats. Marshall Faulk, Bryant Young, Isaac Bruce, Kevin Mawai, and Larry Allen all came out of this class. The depth is just as impressive, with players like Willie McGinnis, Aaron Glenn, Marcus Spears, and Jason Gilden all becoming household names and key pieces on championship-level teams. The next class arguably produced the best offensive tackle and tight end of all time. The 1997 NFL Draft class is another all-timer. Orlando Pace, Walter Jones, Tony Gonzalez, Rondé Barber, and Jason Taylor all came out of this class. The draft is deep with Pro Bowlers and long-term starters like Warwick Dunn, Darren Sharper, and James Ferrier. The 1997 draft helped set the tone for the modern NFL, and its legacy is still felt on every Sunday. Along with the 1981 NFL class, you have Lawrence Taylor, Kenny Easley, and Ronnie Lott all taken in the top 8, all being Hall of Famers. Then you have another 3 Hall of Famers taken in the second round alone with Mike Singletary, Howie Long, and Ricky Jackson. Another Hall of Fame player in Russ Grimm taken in the third, who was a part of the Hogs of the 80s Redskins linemen. You have other notable players like Chris Collinsworth, Dennis Smith, and James Brooke as well. An absolutely stacked class. When you think of the 2000s to 2010s quarterback play, that's because of this draft. The 2004 NFL draft is legendary for its quarterback class alone. Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Big Ben all went within the first 11 picks, and each one became the face of a franchise. The greatness doesn't stop there. Larry Fitzgerald, Vince Wilfork, Jared Allen are all going to be in the Hall of Fame if they're not already. You have other guys like Ben Watson, Carlos Dansby, Bob Sanders, Sean Taylor, and Steven Jackson all coming out of this class. The depth of talent is remarkable. 2004 is a blueprint for how to find stars at every position, and it's a class that will be talked about for generations. Speaking of generations, this next class produced multiple generational QBs and an all-time running back, all in the first round. Finally, the 2018 NFL draft class is being recognized as one of the most insane collections of talent in recent memory. The top of the class is loaded with generational quarterbacks like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, who are going to be in the Hall of Fame, while Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold have also had their moments. You have a 2,000-yard rusher in Saquon Barkley, who just won Offensive Player of the Year while leading his team to a Super Bowl victory in 2024. The class is stacked with stars on both sides. Roquan Smith, Denzel Ward, Derwin James, Quentin Nelson, Darius Leonard, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Jair Alexander are all among the best at their positions. You even have late-round finds like Foyesade Oluokun and Jordan Mailata as well, along with the legend Will Clapp. Even in just a few years, the 2018 class has produced multiple All-Pros and looks poised to fill a lot of them in Canton. When it's all said and done, this class may eventually be at the top, but it's just not right now.
Level 7, the best.
In Level 7, these are the best draft classes of all time, and there's 5. 1964, 1983, 1989, 1996, and 2011. Starting with 1964, a draft class that's almost mythical in its impact. This draft class is a Hall of Fame factory. Bob Brown, Paul Warfield, Carl Eller, Charlie Taylor, Mel Renfro, Bob Hayes, Leroy Kelly, Paul Krause, Dave Wilcox, and Roger Staubach all came out of this class, each one earning a gold jacket and leaving a permanent mark on this game. But nearly 20 years later, we got a draft class just as impactful. The 1983 NFL Draft is a quarterback class that every fan knows by heart. John Elway, Dan Marino, and Jim Kelly all went in the first round, and each one became a franchise icon and a Hall of Famer. But the greatness doesn't stop there. There's Eric Dickerson, Jimbo Covert, Bruce Matthews, Darryl Green, Richard Dent, all came out of this class, and each one of those people are also enshrined in Canton. You got others like Henry Ellard, Reggie Roby, and Gary Kubiak a part of this class as well. The next crew had arguably the best top 5 in all of professional sports draft history. The 1989 NFL draft class is another all-timer. Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders, Derek Thomas, and Deion Sanders all went in the top 5, and every one of them is a Hall of Famer in generational talent. You have Steve Atwater, who went later in the first and is also a Hall of Famer. Other Pro Bowl level guys and long-term starters like Andre Rison, Trace Armstrong, Eric Metcalf, Steve Wisniewski, Carnell Lake, Wesley Walls, and Mark Stepniewski. This class is deep with Pro Bowlers and long-term starters, and at the top of the draft, every team got exactly what they wanted, except for the Packers. The mid-90s were full of whimsy. The NBA on NBC, the Notorious B.I.G., and possibly the greatest NFL draft class we'd ever see. The 1996 NFL draft is often cited as the greatest wide receiver class, but it's so much more than that. With the first pick of the draft, you have Keyshawn Johnson, multiple-time Pro Bowler who had an iconic commercial with Kobe Bryant. Ray Lewis, Marvin Harrison, Zach Thomas, Terrell Owens, Jonathan Ogden, and Brian Dawkins all entered the league in 1996, and every one of them is a Hall of Famer. The class is loaded with Pro Bowlers and impact players at every position. Willie Anderson, Mike Allstott, Eddie George, Lawyer Malloy, and Teddy Bruschi, just to name a few. The sheer volume of greatness is honestly overwhelming. And the 1996 draft is a masterclass in how to build a Hall of Fame roster in a single weekend. Remember when I said the early 2010s had an insane NFL draft run? Yeah, we're revisiting that topic with 2011. Finally, the 2011 NFL Draft is the modern standard for greatness. This class is overflowing with stars. J.J. Watt, Cam Newton, Pat Pete, Richard Sherman, Jason Kelsey, Julio Jones, Tyron Smith, and Von Miller all came out of this class. And the list of Pro Bowlers and All-Pros goes on and on. You have A.J. Green, Ryan Kerrigan, Cam Jordan, Cam Hayward, Torrey Smith, Justin Houston, K.J. Wright, and Tyrod Taylor, all from this class as well. The 2011 class is remarkable for its depth. With impact players found in every round and at every position, it's a draft that helped shape the current era of the NFL. And as more players from this class head to Canton, its reputation as one of the best only grows stronger. And so there you have it, the 7 levels of NFL draft classes. Thanks for watching.